Alright, what's up everybody? Why did the game sounds not come on? Okay. You say so, Butters. I've seen your picture. Alright, so let's get into this. So, here's what I'm gonna do. Instead of having you watch me pick flowers for an hour, I'm gonna put on... I'm gonna put on the Zoljara Legacy of the Amani short story for you to listen to while I pick flowers. It's gonna go over the tops. There's gonna be like animated stuff, but it's not actually animated. It's just like, I guess it's 2D animated, sort of, but not quite like the Zalatat thing. So I'm gonna put that on while I do flowers and dyes, so it doesn't just look like you're staring at me picking flowers and making dyes. I'll leave my microphone on. No, I won't. I'll mute my microphone just in case it comes through. But if you guys chat, I'll turn it back on and chat and all that stuff. So, let me start this up. So here's that. So here we go.
Fatality.
All right. Well, that didn't have any sound, so that doesn't work. Oh, I know why. It is that one, not that one. Okay. Let's try this again.
Welcome. My name is Mrgl, and I voice Zoljara in World of Warcraft Midnight. Today I'll be reading Legacy of the Amani. Join me. The sharp scent of soot, iron, and earth saturated the room. Firelight painted solemn faces in swatches of shadow and flame. A pyre burned atop an altar, crackling an accompaniment to the low croon of Kinduru's voice. The speaker swayed before ancient stone, shaped in the likeness of a great eagle. Her wings outspread, her noble face turned toward the hidden heavens. Akilzon, mother of storms and skies. Once primary loa of the Amani, but no more. She had forsaken them. And still, Kinduru danced. He stamped his feet against the packed earth in a sister rhythm to drums that beat for him alone. His arms twisted overhead, then spread wide as if he meant to take flight. From where she knelt nearby, Zoljara watched her uncle worship. She listened to him sing Akilzon's praises and beseech blessings that would never come. A waste of time, some small part of her protested. With a last lingering note, Kinduru collected a wooden bowl from the altar and lifted it in offering and supplication. He bowed deeply before the great eagle, then faced Zoljara. She felt her spine straighten, but did her best to remain still, her knees in the dirt, her hands at her sides, and her body bent forward. Hopefully, this would be done soon.
Akilzon,
Kinduru called.
we lay your mark upon this chosen daughter.
He dipped a finger into the bowl. It came away a deep red, which he then swept against Zoljara's arms, shoulders, and neck.
You look just like your mother,
Kinduru murmured as he painted.
but I see the fierceness of your grandfather in your eyes, sharp and dangerous.
Anger burned like venom in Zoljara's belly. I am nothing like him. Kinduru's smile faded at the edges as he regarded her, still kneeling at the center of the hazy circle of torches, the smoke and cloying scent of the ceremonial oils heavy in the air. The speaker raised his voice once more.
Great Eagle, take her mind, body, and spirit under your wing. Give her strength and wisdom. Keep watch over her, guide her, so she may do the same for her people.
His paintless hand fell atop her head.
Zuljara, bloodborn of Zuljin, soon chieftain of the Amani.
His words were firm, but the faintest curl to his lip betrayed his pride.
I still don't understand why she has to do this.
Zul'Jin stood just outside the circle with their mother.
And I don't understand why you have to step down. Then you mean to misunderstand.
Chieftain Zarama pushed from behind clenched teeth. Zuljara's annoyance mirrored the sharpness of her mother's reply. Why did her brother always make a point to press at an unpleasant topic as if it were a bruise? And now, of all times, this ceremony should have been a moment of celebration for their family. The two of them here to witness her ascension. Instead, a thread of tension twisted through it all, tight as a bowstring. Zarama went on.
You worry for your sister, but she is strong. Stronger than I.
It took every ounce of Zuljara's not insignificant will to keep her gaze from dragging to her mother's injuries. Burn wounds concealed by a cloak Zarama clutched closed as she spoke.
Strong enough to dissuade challenge from the other tribes. And you're not, Zul'Jin retorted. The mighty Zarama who fought off a Liadrin on her own in the dead of night, then bloody from battle marched home bearing the scars of victory.
Some weeks ago, their mother's caravan was ambushed by the giants that roamed the forests near their settlement. They'd crushed her ribs in with a burning log, shattered her leg. Against such burns, even the greatest troll would find difficulty healing.
On top of everything else you've done,
Zul'Jin tutted, his voice snatching Zuljara back to the moment at hand.
Isn't that enough?
Few could match her mother, true. But Zuljara had begun to build her own legend. And not just as Zarama's daughter. Her skills in combat could not be denied. They'd been tested not only in training but in the wilds, during reconnaissance missions and skirmishes along their borders to maintain what lands had not been stolen. Zarama placed one hand upon her son's shoulder.
You don't have to defend my name. It stands on its own. But these are wounds I may not heal from.
Her hold on the cloak tightened.
If I remain chieftain, I'm challenged and defeated.
She did not have to finish. They all understood what that meant for their family, for their people. Zul'Jin pursed his lips around his tusks.
But you can...
Enough, Jean! Zuljara had little patience for her brother's protests. This is happening. It was always going to happen. Zul'Jin dipped his head in deference. He couldn't argue the truth of that. She was the eldest. This was her path. Kinduru, who stood by silently during their disagreement, as he so often did, cleared his throat.
If you are finished.
Zarama sucked her teeth and gestured for them to continue. Zuljara faced her uncle.
As I was saying.
He set his hand on her head once more.
Zuljara, bloodborn of Zuljin, soon chieftain of the Amani. Arise and present yourself worthy.
Zuljara pushed to her feet, her knees complaining, her legs numb. She could imagine her uncle prattling on about how, in his day, they could kneel for hours without issue.
But the young people no longer pray.
Because there is no one to hear us. Finished. He backed away and bent low as he declared.
One to the other. Let it be passed.
Zarama approached her daughter, her cloak falling back to reveal her own painted palm, and a brief glimpse of the gnarled skin at the edges of scarred flesh. The sight tore at something inside Zuljara. With steady fingers, Zarama left her mark on her daughter's face and fate. Zuljara saw a softness dancing in her mother's eyes, something fond. Then it was gone.
The other tribes await our arrival.
Zarama took up her axe. It was a massive thing with spikes as long as her fingers around the head of the blade and flame at its heart. She faltered under its weight. Both Zuljara and Kinduru reached for her. Even Zuljan had stepped forward, but Zarama waved them off, then gathered herself with her shoulders back and her head high.
Let us greet the future of the Amani.
The journey from Akilzon's shrine to the meeting hall wasn't long at all. A single bridge hung suspended between the structures, situated on the two tallest hills. Amani Za stretched out around them. The village had become a waypoint of sorts for any driven here with high elven blades and magic at their backs. The colonizers and their allies raided Amani lands and snatched up territory, forcing people from their homes. Those who weren't slain. Here, in the cover of Alkilzon's reach, there was safety, shelter. This was sovereign land. At one time under the protection of the Loa. Survivors took time to recover before moving on, though some chose to remain. Thus the Amani survived in the shadows of the sprawling cities that had once dotted the empire. Cities Zuljara had never laid eyes on, but they filled her dreams still. Each stone placed by stories the elders told. When she and her brother were younger, their uncle and mother spoke of the past. How the Loa dwelled in their temples, and the speakers, who were numerous then, would invoke their blessings for everything, from the anointing of a new chieftain to the birth of new babes. The people offered prayers before eating, before travel, before visits to friends and family, before planting crops or harvesting the same, before placing bets on games or tournaments. Reverence for the gods saturated every aspect of Amani life.
We were truly blessed,
Kinduru would say with this far-off look in his eyes, a look of wonder and longing. No? Some might say the Amani were lucky to be alive. As their small group went along, Zuljara glimpsed new faces mingling among her people. Perhaps mingle wasn't the right word. The visitors remained in tight groups, though some broke off to speak with others. The rich brown armor and pale paint of the witherbark was easy to identify. So were the brilliant yellows and burning oranges of the shadow pine, and the vibrant greens and blues of the vile branch. The bones of their masks made it especially easy to pick them out. As a matter of fact, the number of white faces amongst green was a surprise and a concern. There are so many, eh?
I noticed as well.
Kinduru murmured without turning.
Seems Kolanji has traded elders for warriors.
Zuljara barely repressed a snarl. Time spent at her mother's side meant she'd attended many a gathering with leaders from the other tribes. Of them all, she liked the arrogant Kolanji the least.
I don't see any Reventusk,
she remarked.
Likewise.
Have they been waylaid?
Perhaps.
Kinduru assented, though he did not sound convinced. Neither was she. Few good things resulted in the absence of a tribe's entire retinue. Guards stood on either side of the meeting hall's entry. At Zarama's approach, they straightened and offered salutes. The sounds and smells of the gathering reached Zuljara before the sight of it. Oiled leather, the heady aroma of roots and herbs carried by the shaman. And beneath it all, the acrid scent of sweat. Inside, each tribe had taken their usual place around the grand room. There were so many vile branch they spilled over into the empty space reserved for the Reventusk. Zarama paused to greet each tribe's representative personally, and Zuljara took the opportunity to scan the eastern wall of the room. Sure enough, a familiar face stuck out amongst the shadows. A tall but slim figure stood braced against a support beam, arms folded, piercing green eyes slowly roving over their guests. Zuljara waited until that gaze found hers, then tilted her head in silent beckoning. The figure melted into the crowd, disappearing for a moment before re-emerging at her shoulder. Zuljara. Ralji. Zuljara didn't address the figure directly, instead keeping one eye on her mother as she finished her greetings. Any word from the Revan Tusk? None, Ralji offered. Barely a year older than Zuljara, Ral was one of their finest scouts. If there was anything amiss, she could uncover it. I've prepared a small search party just in case. Send word of whatever you find. Ralji bowed, then stepped back and away, slipping from the hall.
What was that about?
Came a curious murmur from Zuljara's back. Her brother no doubt overheard the conversation, but thankfully had not interrupted. Following a hunch, she shot him a look she hoped conveyed they would speak about it later. Too many roving eyes and open ears present. Zuljan's brow puckered. He clearly had questions, but held them behind pursed lips. Careful, or your face will get stuck like that, Zuljara said.
I'll still be prettier.
She smiled for the first time in hours. Leave it to Jean. Soon their group was moving again. The rumble of conversation receded as they passed, those in attendance lowering their heads or offering salute to Zarama. It didn't go unnoticed that a number of Vilebranch did not. Zarama reached the table at the head of the room, taking her seat behind it. Zuljara stood at her mother's right hand and Zuljan on her left, while Kinduru made a show of bowing before stepping off to the side entirely. Zuljara followed her mother's gaze as it landed on each of the representatives at the front of their band. Well, 2 of 3. Kolanji remained seated and wore the faintest sneer. It widened when his gaze caught Zuljara's, and revulsion rippled through her.
We have much to discuss,
Zarama began. Heads bobbed. Affirmations scattered through the room like rain.
Our scouts bring word of newly established supply lines from the south. Behind their gilded walls, the elves are building something. We must be ready to stand against whatever comes.
Zarama's gaze flicked to the empty Revan Tusk section, but it was only for an instant.
To that end, I will no longer be your chieftain. I would have my daughter Zuljara lead in my place.
At the sound of her name, Zuljara stepped forward. Zarama continued.
Trained by my hand, she has braved many dangers to ensure the safety of our people. She has studied our enemy, knows their tactics, and will be their reckoning. The legend of our line sings in her blood.
Cheers erupted around the room, and pride swelled in Zuljara's chest. This was it. Everything her mother, her father, and her uncle had instilled in her. It was all for this moment. She lifted her chin as she had seen her mother, her chieftain, do so many times.
I believe,
an unpleasantly familiar voice interjected,
that before the mantle is passed, we get a say.
Kolanji tilted forward, flexing muscled arms covered in more scars than skin. Zuljara's jaw clenched tight.
Kolanji,
Zarama acknowledged with practiced poise.
You wish to speak?
The Vilebranch leader offered a smile that was all teeth.
I do.
He finally stood, taking hold of a massive mace. The head was well worn from pounding his enemies into a pulp, the pommel shorn into a wicked red-stained spear. Lifting the weapon with one hand, he leveled it at Zuljara.
You claim this girl knows the elves. Has she faced them in more than border skirmishes? Stared down their numbers, the downpour of their arrows, the fire at their fingertips, and chosen to fight anyway?
Not for the first time since learning she was to be chieftain. Zuljara felt a hollowness in her being, a lacking she wasn't sure how to reconcile.
No, unsurprising.
Kalanji switched targets, aiming a thick finger at an unmoved Zarama.
Your family's failures have cost us what little our enemies didn't take. Now you present this untested child to lead?
He sucked his teeth, the insults carrying to every corner of the room.
I think not.
White-hot fury filled Zujara. You choose now of all times, infighting while the elves could be preparing an attack. Manic delight danced across Kalanji's face.
Elves are the least of your troubles, girl.
He played his tongue against his teeth, teasing the leather band around one tusk.
I invoke the right of challenge.
The room exploded with cries of treachery from one side and the demand to honor the challenge from the other. Zarama lifted her hands for silence, but the tribes continued to hiss and spit. Weapons appeared in raised fists. Insults and accusations flew like spears. Cretins, all of them. Zojan played at disinterest, but his wide eyes betrayed his worry. Fed up, Zojara snatched her mother's axe from its place on the table. She hefted it overhead and with a roar brought it down. The blade struck the chamber floor with a sound like thunder, a webwork of cracks splitting the stone. A snarl curled her lips as she heaved the weapon from the fractured floor. Your chieftain called for order, she addressed the gathering, while glaring at a still smiling Kalanji. Silence fell in her wake as she returned to her mother's side. Zarama's expression was unreadable, but the anger that had roiled in Zujara glittered in her mother's eyes. Very well, Zarama said, her voice the quiet before a storm.
The challenge will be answered.
It was a miracle the conclave dispersed without violence. Kalanji took his forces and retreated beyond the bounds of the settlement. The other tribes returned to their designated lodgings. The hall stood empty, save for Zujara and her family. While an all-out brawl had been avoided, there was still plenty to fight about. Let me face him! Irritation pounded in Zujara's temples. He is one troll! Jara, her mother began, while massaging her brow. I can do it!
No!
Zarama cut the air with her hand.
Kalanji may be a conniving, backstabbing snake, but his fangs are sharp, and his strike is deadly.
Her gaze fell to where her axe rested on the table once more. If he wants a fight, then I will give it to him. Incredulity lodged itself in Zujara's throat like a fist. Before she could shake it loose, Kinduru interjected.
And you will lose. Don't look at me like that. I was there when you all but tumbled into the healing hut. You were a mess. But think the lower you were alive. You've only just recovered enough to call this conclave and stand for the ceremony. You cannot face another warrior in a fight to the death. Besides, if you stand in for Jara, it will only undermine her.
The speaker looked from his brother's wife to his niece, then back again.
Zuljara was the one challenged. By right, the decision is hers. And what about the next challenger?
Zuljan said.
Or the one after that, and the one after that.
Zuljara narrowed her eyes at her brother. Why would...
Kalanji didn't just pick a fight, he called you unworthy. Beating him won't make that go away.
Unfortunately, her brother was right. Given the responses during the conclave, others shared Kalanji's sentiments. She could be fighting off challengers for the rest of her days as chieftain.
In my day,
Kinduru began.
Here he goes again,
Zuljan murmured.
In my day,
Kinduru cut a look at his nephew.
Aloa's favor was enough to dissuade challenges. The Aloa are gone.
Zarama snapped with a tut, losing her patience.
And so is their favor.
In moments like this, it was easy to feel how the Loa's absence haunted the tribes, like a broken bone left to heal without being said. Her people were recovering, but they would carry this hurt the rest of their lives.
The Loa are missing, but their favor lingers.
Kinduru turned to Zuljara.
You must make the climb to Akuzon's temple. Out of the question,
Zarama barked.
The mountain is too dangerous now.
Kinduru pressed on.
In the temple, you will find an axe. Akuzon gave it to our people long ago. A gift from the lower carries their divine touch. And while the journey is perilous, it is not impossible. Returning with the axe would be proof enough for many that while silent, the lower may still watch over us, over you. Defeat Kolanji with it. Show them you are worthy indeed.
Silence stretched to fill the hall. Whatever rebuttal Zarama had prepared seemed to wither on her tongue as she realized, along with the rest of them, that this was probably the only way to ensure the stability of her daughter's reign. She closed her eyes and released a breath heavy enough that Zuljara felt her own shoulders sag with it.
You truly wish to do this?
Zarama asked, her voice soft but tight. Zuljara nodded. I want to. I need to. Whether or not it means the lower favor me, doing this will prove I am strong enough to lead our people and defend my name, undercut Kolanji's claim that I am untested. Without another word, Zarama rose and came around the table. Zuljara noticed how she favored her right leg in a slight limp, but said nothing. She simply went into her open arms.
The challenge requires 2 days of preparation,
Zarama whispered into her hair.
I can stall for that long, but if you don't return by the 3rd,
I'll make it, Mother. The embrace tightened, almost painfully so.
You come back to me, you hear? Come back.
With the decision made, Zuljara saw to preparing. The mountain was not far, but the peak where the temple rested was high, and the enchanted winds that used to carry people to the dais went still the day the Loa vanished. Without the Sky Mother's blessing, the ascent was practically a death sentence, one Zuljara would face. Her eyes went to the gathered supplies spread across the table centered in her chambers. It was usually covered in maps and missives. Tonight, she'd laid out the provisions she'd need to make this journey. A knock sounded at her door, briefly distracting her from the task. Enter? To her surprise, her brother stepped through. He took in the supply-covered table.
A little light for a 2-day journey.
More than enough for what I need to do. Zuljan sank back against the closed door. Neither spoke as she packed, the silence between them thickening until...
There are other ways you could defeat Kolanji. Ways that don't involve you risking your life for a ceremonial weapon that means nothing now that the Loa are gone.
It wasn't the words themselves, but the way he spoke, softly as if sharing a secret, that made Zuljara pause. She considered him carefully. Such as...
A poison?
Tempting, Zuljara admitted.
But no. Nothing potent enough to take his life, just slow him, steal his strength for a while, give Mother time to...
So you doubt me as well, hmm? Zuljara spun to face her brother. She felt her lips purse and her brows lift in an open challenge for him to answer. Zuljan met the look with his usual quiet confidence. A lifetime together meant he had something of a handle on his sister's moods.
I am probably the one person who never doubted you. But if you want to stand a chance against Kolanji, you should spend the next few days resting, training, anything but chasing after some fairy tale.
Enough, Jean. Enough! She cut the air between them with her hand. I am doing this. I have to do this.
Why?
That single word was both demand and plea. She could see it in his eyes. The hurt, the fear. For her, she wanted to hug him, to pull him close and promise all would be well. I just do. I don't expect you to understand. A different sort of pain flickered across his face.
Then I suppose it's a good thing that I don't.
With a feeling like stones in her stomach, Zuljara returned to making her preparations. And you never will. The silence from before returned. She did her best to ignore it, to ignore the feeling of her brother's eyes boring into the back of her head. Then, just before she gave in to the need to say something, tell him to leave or to help, he spoke.
I've known you to be many things, sister. Steady, passionate, strong, kind, but never foolish. Until now. Don't let your stubbornness cost more than you can give.
The door thumped closed behind him. Left alone, Zoljara simply stood in the quiet. She knew her brother's words were born of concern, but to suggest such underhanded tactics... Then again, the Vile Branch weren't exactly known for their stringent morality. Another knock shook her from her contemplations.
I'm not in the mood for any more of your nonsense, John.
What did he do this time? Came an amused voice. Zoljara turned to find Ralji standing in her doorway, her face full of gentle teasing, and couldn't help but smile faintly in return.
Nothing. Just... my brother has a way with words. Sometimes the wrong way.
She gestured for Ral to enter.
What did you find?
The scout closed the door before speaking. The Revan Tusk were not waylaid. They didn't come.
What?
They didn't come. Ralji splayed her empty hands as if in apology. In protest. She didn't have to say why. Zoljara already knew.
To me,
she spat.
My becoming chieftain.
Maybe. Ralji crossed the small space to make herself comfortable on the bed. She patted the spot beside her in silent beckoning. My sources say chatter about the elves gathering strength has them concerned.
Not just them.
Zoljara flopped beside Ral, earning a faint chuckle. No, but the protest is more a judgment on what happened the last time the tribes joined forces than you personally, if it makes you feel better.
It doesn't.
Ralji's expression softened as she folded one of Zoljara's hands in hers. It's not you. The warm press of fingers was a comfort, but Zoljara's traitorous thoughts would not leave her be.
No, just my family. One more stone my grandfather has placed around my neck.
Bending at the waist, she dropped her face into her hands and swallowed a frustrated groan. I can't pretend to know what you're going through. Hands fell to her shoulders and drew her out of her wallowing. But you don't need to face it on your own. Those same hands then lifted to cup either side of her face, thumbs brushing against her cheeks. There are people you can turn to. People who care for you. Zoljara's ire abated. She bowed her head and shut her eyes when Ralji's brow pressed to her own. I know. Yet you will climb a cursed mountain alone. No doubt Ral had choice words about Zoljara's decision.
I've climbed many mountains alone.
I would go with you.
I know.
Without hesitation.
I know.
Ralji sighed, the sound weighty with resignation and the quiet disappointment of being unable to help those you love. If you know so much, then you know I'm not happy about this. And that I'll be right here for you. Ralji folded her arms around Zoljara and held her close in the coming dark. Always. The village was quiet when Zoljara crept from her home and down the empty pathways. Under the cover of night, she was able to slip into the forest without alerting the Amani sentinels or the Vile Branch contingent camped at their door. Keeping a steady but swift pace, she went over her plan for the 100th time. It was much too dark to make the steepest part of the climb, but she would go as far as she could. If she set out again at first light, she could reach the peak by mid-afternoon. Then it was just a matter of finding the axe, climbing back down and returning in time to meet Kolanji's challenge. It was a loose plan with too many opportunities for disruption, but it was all she had. Along the path, she happened upon small shrines dedicated to Akilzon. In the past, these monuments would be covered in candles and offerings left by the faithful. Tribute crafted by a believer's hands or baskets full of food. Some even offered furs from hunts, all meant to curry favor in various aspects of life. After the Loa ceased speaking, the shrines grew empty and dark. It was at one of these sacred sites that she decided to make camp. The area was relatively flat, slightly open but elevated, not the most concealed, but defensible if necessary. Lowering her bag, she began to unpack what was needed for the night. Around her, the forest lay still. No wind, no creatures burrowing in the undergrowth. Yet her time amongst the trees meant when leaves rustled a touch too sharply, she knew she wasn't alone. She reached as if to pull something else from her pack, but closed her hand around her spear instead. Another rustle, this time closer, then closer. When her would-be assailant reached the edge of the clearing, Zuljara sprang upward, spinning on her heel in the same motion. There, a figure in the dark. She leapt, ready to drive her weapon through their heart. Hands went up in defense. Jara! Jean? Shock iced her body mid-lunge, and she nearly tripped over herself in an effort to stay her attack. Her brother's eyes were wide in the moon's light, dancing between her and the tip of her spear. "What are you doing?" she demanded in a hiss. Zul'Jin slowly lowered his hands.
Hopefully not losing my head.
But only barely. She dropped her weapon, though not before smacking the pommel against her idiot sibling's arm. "I could have killed you." Zul'Jin followed to where her pack rested.
You're too skilled for that.
"Why are you skulking around in the dark?"
Isn't it obvious?
He asked in that sarcastic tone of his.
I'm here to help.
"I don't need your help."
You might.
"You could have been attacked by Nalden. Or elves."
So could you. Look, I know you have it in your head to do everything on your own. You have since we were children.
Zuljara scowled, hoping that if he couldn't see her expression clearly, he could feel it. "You're still a child."
Yet you're the one throwing a tantrum.
He dodged another swing of her spear.
Let me start over. I understand why you're doing this.
He paused, considered, then confessed.
Actually, I don't. But we promised to face this world and its challenges together. You are always going to lead, and I was always going to be there to support you. If this is how it starts, with you climbing a mountain in the middle of the lower Forsaken Night to find some fancy axe, then I'm with you.
Staring at her brother, hearing his words, the last embers of Zuljara's irritation cooled. She sighed, shaking her head. "You're supposed to be the clever one." Zuljin smiled, eyes twinkling.
I am.
"Pretty foolish to come after me by yourself. I trek these forests alone all the time. You still get lost in markets."
In my defense,
Zuljin began as he stepped closer.
That place is chaos incarnate, and there's no way I can get lost following you.
Despite their recent disagreements, Zuljin had been in her shadow their whole lives, not plotting a betrayal or planning his own rise, but genuinely there to look after her, as he knew she would always look after him. "Fine. If you're going to come, at least make yourself useful. Gather wood for a fire." Between the two of them, the task of setting camp was a quick one. Soon they sat near the trembling light of a newborn fire, rations warming on a stone. Zuljara poked at the flame's innards to coax out a bit more light and warmth, while her brother busied his hands with coal and parchment. He was sketching, she realized. "You haven't done that for a while." She gestured to the drawing.
"I do it all the time."
He scratched out a few more lines of what appeared to be a portrait.
"You just don't pay attention anymore."
"Don't pay attention anymore." She pitched her voice to mock him, then smiled and leaned forward with interest. Her breath caught cold in her chest. It wasn't an exact likeness. Things built from memory hardly ever were, but she knew the face all the same. "Is that—" Jean nodded.
"Father. I draw him sometimes, when I'm afraid I'm forgetting what he looked like, or wondering what he might do or say."
He tilted the parchment so she could get a better look. Zuljara stared, transfixed. Jean was little when they lost their father, so it made sense he would struggle to hold on to the memory. Zuljara had been only slightly older, but for her, it never faded. She remembered strong arms, scooping them onto broad shoulders. She remembered how his booming laughter had filled their home. The father was a big man with a big heart. Kinduru would tease him for being the soft one. Compared to Zarama, most were, but that never stopped Manye from doting on his children. Where their mother exemplified discipline and the iron will of a chieftain, their father had embodied love. love for one's family and people. Zarama prepared her children for the realities of the future, for the trials that would surely come. Manye had instilled in them a respect for the past, when the Loa still enchanted their world and dreams of reclaiming their people's greatness seemed not so distant.
What do you think he'd say?
Zul'Jin asked, drawing Zoljara out of the memories.
About all this?
I don't know. Zoljara turned to check the food and sneakily wipe a few tears from her face.
Maybe he'd say you should go home before you get yourself hurt.
Zul'Jin narrowed his eyes, then set aside the sketch and shifted closer.
You're the oldest and the heir, but don't forget I was there too, for Mother's lessons, for her training, during long nights when the weight of everything, not just the position but the defeat that placed it on her head, the broken legacy it carried, the withdrawal of our Loa and growing mistrust of the people nearly crushed her. Without father and uncle by her side, it would have.
Zoljara glared at the flames, watching them twist and dance. He was right, but that made the unfairness of it all harder to bear.
You were the one born to carry the burden, but I know it as intimately as you do. I don't want to see my sister broken.
Hissing, Zoljara pulled away. I am not breaking. In the swaying light of the fire, Zul'Jin's gaze was steady and a touch saddened.
Maybe not now, but if you continue down this path you've chosen...
I didn't choose this path. It was chosen for me, same as it was chosen for Mother, by their grandfather's actions. Deep down, Zoljara blamed Zul'Jin for what had befallen their people. If he hadn't let his pride bait him into challenging the Horde, then the Amani's subsequent defeat wouldn't have shattered them. And perhaps the Amani and her family wouldn't have fallen so far. For all his blustering and pomposity, Kolanji was right about one thing. Failure was part of her inheritance.
You've got that look on your face,
Zul'Jin remarked flatly.
What look?
She grumbled.
The I don't care what Jean says, I'm gonna do what I want look?
A smile broke free despite her mood, a small one. There's a look for that?
Mm-hmm, that one.
He brought a knuckle to her face and dug it into her cheek.
Right there.
Stop! She swatted him away with one hand and rubbed her face with the other. Her small smile widened. Jean wore a matching one.
Better,
he said.
Can't go to bed angry.
Something else their father taught them. Thinking of him settled something in Zoljara. What she wouldn't give to be able to ask his advice on all of this. But he was gone.
We can go back,
Zul'Jin said.
Come up with a plan that doesn't risk you falling from a mountaintop.
I won't fall.
But you could. Then Mother will have to face the challenge while injured and grieving. How do you think that would go?
She could feel her brother's eyes on her. But instead of answering, she took up a portion of the now burnt meal and held it out. Eat, then rest. We have a trying day ahead. The sun hadn't even crested the horizon when they broke camp, Zoljara taking the lead and setting the pace. Zul'Jin followed wordlessly, accompanied by the constant scritch and scratch against his drawing pad. Just like when we were younger. She remembered similar mornings, rising early to see to a litany of duties, with Jean trailing after. Jean, who was ever present, ever loyal. While she wouldn't admit it aloud, she was glad he'd followed her one more time. They didn't stop to rest or eat, instead passing the water sack and a hunk of dried boar back and forth as they walked. Somehow they reached the final climb without incident. At last, a stroke of good fortune. Right, she nodded, then tightened the strings on her pack. Wait here while I...
Wait here?
Zul'Jin barked an incredulous laugh.
You still want to do this alone?
I'll go faster with just...
If you are so determined to die, why not just jump off the mountain and be done with it, eh? Kolanji can swing his mace at your memory.
Zoljara felt her anger rise to a spear's point. What do you want me to do, Jean? Put venom in his food? Maybe slit his throat in his sleep? He shrugged.
Better him dead than you.
So you would have me live with the shame of such a thing?
He'd do it to you if he could. And the point is, you'd live. I know you don't mind running from a fight, but not all of us are comfortable skulking in the shadows and striking from hidden places. Our people need a leader, not a coward. Zul'Jin recoiled as if struck, his eyes swimming with hurt. That's when it hit her that he thought she was talking about him when she meant Kolanji. She opened her mouth to apologize, but paused. If Jean was upset with her, he wouldn't want to go. He'd turn back. He'd be safe. Then, after she retrieved the axe and returned home, she could explain. While it killed her to hurt him like this, it was for the best. It's what a chieftain would do. No, look at him. Some small part of her screamed, "You can't leave it, apologize." Instead, she lifted her chin. The pain on her brother's face vanished under a mask of indifference, which was worse than if he had shouted at her. He nodded. "It rained a couple of days ago," he murmured, his voice far calmer than it should have been. It sent a shudder through her. "Mind the loose rocks." Then he turned and started back the way they'd come. Zul'Jin watched him go, still wanting so desperately to call after him, to chase him, grab him, say she didn't mean it that way. She swallowed the words and impotent desires, then spun on her heel and started her climb. Fueled by her anger at herself, Zul'Jin took to the mountainside like a spider, hand over hand, foot over foot. The burn in her belly propelled her ever upward. Twice she nearly lost her footing and almost went plummeting to her death, but her training and skill kept her grounded. She had no idea how long she clung to the side of the mountain, but eventually she managed to heave herself onto the temple dais. She collapsed against the smooth stone, her arms trembling, her lungs on fire.